Amit, the company that you founded, RML AgTech, offers mobile services to smallholder farmers. Can you tell me a little bit about the service and what it offers?
Sure. So the company started as a business unit called Reuters Market Light in Reuters and later Thomson Reuters, which provided, in the early days, a feature phone-based SMS service to the farming community. Personalized SMSs in local languages on weather forecast, market prices, market intelligence, and advisory, helping farmers improve their productivity and their price realization, reduce their losses, and in effect also make the agriculture value chain more sustainable. It was a product that was sold on a subscription basis to the farming community in 9 languages across the country in India. That has now evolved into a very sophisticated Android-based app within the RML AgTech world, which is an independent company now that we spun out from Reuters with venture capital funding. And now it has richer content on weather advisory, richer content and more engaging content on intelligence and advisory. But the purpose remains the same, helping the farmers improve their productivity, increase their price realization, and making farming more sustainable.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what decisions farmers make differently on the basis of this information and how it improves perhaps their farm practices or the price that they receive?
Sure. So a user, whether he's at the sowing stage or at the harvest stage, requires information to make better decisions. This information, which is personalized to that user, for example, at the time of harvesting stage, they want to go to a market which fetches them the highest price. They will get the price information from the markets that they have chosen with a trend line which shows how the prices have moved, let's say for the cotton grower, and he can then decide which market to go to and negotiate the price that he knows he's likely to get given the information we've shared. That's on the price side.
Yep.
On the productivity side, we would give advisory on the basis of the stage of the crop cycle. Let's say a cotton grower would then get information about what he needs to do to improve the productivity of the cotton crop that he has grown, or if there is a pest management needed, if there's a disease that is likely to be, we know, an outbreak in that region, we would give them the remedy for that, what chemical to use in what proportion to safeguard that and save the crop and improve productivity. And the third one, very quickly, who to talk to in the agriculture value chain to source better inputs, which traders to connect with, which government officers to talk to get the right subsidy and support, etc.
That sounds like a fantastic product that's obviously making a real difference for farmers. But it's been a long journey. It's taken you a while to get there. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey from the concept or the idea that you had and how that turned eventually into a marketable, scalable product?
It was a very long journey. I had the privilege and the responsibility within Reuters that was very generously given to me to build this company or build this business at that time from a one-page idea of a colleague of mine, Mons. It really got, in the early days, funding from within the corporate to get to a point that we had a product that was really meeting the need of this new user that we were after, creating content that was reliable and in a model that was sustainable on the operating side, but also at a business model that created economic value for the business and also for the large corporate Reuters that was supporting us. And while it began 10 years ago as a small business unit as part of the innovation program of Reuters, as it became Thomson Reuters, we continued our journey, finding ways in which we could improve the product, serve the farming community, serve the agriculture value chain, improve the operating model, make it more efficient, and of course, find ways to make money on this. It eventually ended with a spin-off from Thomson Reuters, which again, Thomson Reuters very generously funded with equity participation and licensing the Reuters name for a few years to the product. And we raised money from a venture capital based in India called IV Cap. And now it continues to run as an independent company called RML AgTech with our new CEO. And I remain a very proud shareholder and the founder who had, again, the privilege and the responsibility to get to this stage. And my team that helped me build this along the journey, many of them are still there. Some of them have moved on, but we're all very happy that this continues to prosper and reaches now millions and millions of farmers delivering real value.
Fantastic. And one of the exciting things we get to do at Grow Asia is meet the startups from the ASEAN region who have these great ideas to change the lives of farmers. New digital products are coming out. What advice do you have for those startups from your experience?
Lessons learned the hard way, I must say, for me and for my team. There were a lot of things that we assumed that we were doing right when we were within the large company. And then when we went out to raise money externally from VCs, even in the process before we actually got the funding, we realized that we were focusing on not the right metrics. Quite often, we were not following understanding the stickiness of the product as well as we should have. We don't necessarily at that time we didn't necessarily understand the unit economics of our product. I think we were swayed away by the aggregated revenues and the sales that were going up. So there were a lot of practices that I call that we learned by becoming a startup or in the process of becoming an independent company. There are about 5 or 6 that we have put together in a framework along the innovation journey that could be applied, which I've shared today as well.
Yes.
But I also must say that while we learned a lot of things as startup, as a tech startup, and those can be learned by new companies, new entrepreneurs, there were a lot of things that were in our favor when we were in a large company. The power of the brand of Reuters, the resources, the influence, the talent, the technology, all of that that I've had access to, and the support of the board and the stakeholders within Reuters and Thomson Reuters leaders was tremendously powerful. So the key lesson that I picked up in this journey, both as a corporate executive, doing it within a large company, and then later as a startup CEO, is that there are mindsets and practices of successful tech startups that can be imbibed in the large company by corporate executives, but there are partnerships that can be struck by the startup community with large corporates that can help accelerate the journey, make it more efficient. So there is a very nice symbiotic relationship that is possible between the two components and really ultimately meet the need and in a way of any user, certainly in this case the farming community, in a way that is economically sustainable.
And there's lots of different models out there now for corporates to incubate and encourage startups so that they can have access to those innovations and intelligence. What's your advice around those models? Have you seen one that works particularly well?
Certainly, I think the first part I would say is for the leaders who are running such initiatives in large corporates and the leaders, whether at the CXO level or at the board level, who are sponsoring these initiatives in large companies, for them to be exposed to those mindset and practices of successful startups, that's, I think, the bare minimum.
Yes.
To be frugal, to be obsessive about the user, to be rapid in experimentation, to be driven by passion and purpose, but also be very, very brutal in taking decisions, quick decisions when they're required to make the thing sustainable. So there are a bunch of things that the startups do right, and they're forced to do it right because otherwise they won't survive. So that's a starting point. I think thereafter, there are ways in which you can engage with the startup community. You can create entrepreneurs, as Reuters did with me and my team within Reuters, encouraging them to build businesses within the right framework, structure, process, and incentives, which are aligned to the corporate goals. Or they could build accelerators or incubators where they are helping companies outside of the core business solve problems which are either in the core or adjacent to what the large corporate is doing. And there are some virtual models that are also emerging. Companies like Innogenesis in London, Accenture, for example, a large company, they are helping startups engage, or rather large corporates engage more systematically in virtual tech clusters, so that they have an always-on model. The pace of technology and the cost of technology is falling down. The pace of change is so rapid that it's very hard for corporate to do everything on their own. So how do you engage with them? You can invest in them, you can partner in them, you can physically host them, but you can also virtually engage with them and learn about what they're doing, what they're getting right in terms of meeting the need, what the product is, how it's evolving. And if the combination is right at the right time, you actually bring them into your value chain. So
Yes.
a startup can
Yeah.
partner
Yeah.
with a large corporate to then solve a problem at a much bigger scale than they could have done independently.
Yeah.
So the speed at which the startups will move will generally be much faster, but the resources and the power of the large corporate cannot be underestimated. A combination of the two is just phenomenal, whether done by bringing the practices internally for entrepreneur or actually engaging with the startups who are outside. Both models would work well.
You've said many times that one of the hallmarks of RML and one of the things that made it work really well was focusing on the user and their journey and their needs. What tools did you use to understand the user and what their journey was and experience and understand the causes of churn?
I think that again is the most fundamental thing I would emphasize again, understanding the user. We applied both qualitative and quantitative techniques. So not only did we quantitatively do research, market research in a structured fashion by running surveys, etc., and understanding what their needs were, articulated and unarticulated.
Yes.
But it was, as it is customary, preceded by qualitative research in focus groups and also through ethnography, just trying to understand in the life of the user, where are the pain points, where are the areas to make an impact. Very often the users, as has been said many times with the Apple example, they don't know what they want till they get it.
Yes.
But what can be observed, what can be gleaned from observation is where are those pain points, where are those areas of friction where value could be created. So we did that throughout, and we not only in the beginning but continuously we gathered data, again hard data but also qualitative data on how the users' needs were being met through the products that we were selling and what more we could do, not just independently but also in relation to the competing products that had come in a differentiated manner that continued to meet their needs, evolved the service to the extent that it was really sticky, and they kept coming back for the service again.
One of the main concerns that I hear when we're talking about these digital tools for farmers is data privacy. One of the really exciting opportunities for a lot of these digital products is selling data and monetizing the farmer's data with input companies, with banks, with government. How can we manage that challenge of data and data privacy while still leveraging the power of that data?
Great point. Data, as they say, is a new oil.
Yes.
And we know that as users using whether it is Amazon or Google or Uber, a lot of value we derive because we're sharing our data with them, and therefore the services are very personalized and sophisticated. The same would apply to this user base as well. And there's a lot of value that can be created because they're sharing data for them, and because the data is valuable to other people in the value chain, there's an economic logic for the service provider too. I think there are two things I believe which are fundamental. While the space is evolving from a regulatory perspective, number one is you always need to take consent. You need to be very transparent about what data you're collecting and how it may be used, and they've given consent for that when you're actually onboarding them. So in our case, when we were getting personalized information in the old world on the phone call from the farmer about their preferences and profile, they knew that if they don't give it to us, we cannot give them a personalized SMS. So it was a clear benefit to them. I think one is consent, and second is freedom. So if they choose to take the data away, if they want to move away, and that's evolving certainly in the Indian context where data ownership rests with the individual, I think that should be allowed. Otherwise, you tend to become de facto monopoly because you're so tied to that, given the history of your usage with that platform that you can't move. I think I would add the third piece as well, which is aggregation. So you may be able to use data in an aggregated form so that it doesn't infringe on the privacy of an individual or a group of individuals. It is aggregated at that level that it still creates benefit for the users elsewhere and for the main individual user, but it doesn't take away either the consent or the freedom for them to move with the data if they want to, but certainly doesn't pinpoint to an individual user. That should not be exposed. So I think these three elements, if we take care of, there is a lot of value that can be derived for the user, not just for the business providing the service.
This space of smallholder digital tools is very exciting, and we're seeing a lot of change and we're seeing a lot of startups. Where do you see the potential going forward over the next 10 years?
And the pace at which the combination of technologies that is changing, whether it is a variety of machine learning capabilities, whether it is artificial intelligence, NLP, etc., or the use of sensors and the enormous amount of data that will come from Internet of Things, certainly mechanization for the farming community, but in all sectors, I would say, whether it's automobile, media, banking and insurance, or agriculture. The pace of technology is accelerating, as everyone knows, and the cost of using is also drastically coming down. What this implies is that two things. One, the amazing possibility of solving unresolved needs and unresolved pain points and unmet needs. A lot more is possible now with the startup world and even with the corporates to now bring to the market. And I think the second thing is that because a lot of it is possible and a lot of companies can jump in, the barriers of entry are very low. You need to be very, very quick in your innovation journey. And that means that you don't only have to do it yourself as a large corporate, you need to do it in partnership, you have to think about it as an ecosystem approach, and you also need to make sure that while you're doing it, you're moving very fast in the innovation journey, you're bringing amazing products and services irrespective of the industry, leveraging data, technology, mobile, and Internet of Things, so really digitally. The basic principles and concepts still remain the same. You still need to be obsessively focused on the user. You still need to make sure that you have an economic logic around it. You need to make sure that you're communicating that to the user and to your stakeholders as much as you need to, and perhaps more. And only when you persevere through that journey is when you're likely to see a sustainable model.
And just thinking from a smallholder perspective, today we're seeing smallholders starting to use mobile wallets, starting to use advice applications like RML. What do you see as most promising from their perspective? What's going to really shift the dial for your average Indian farmer?
I think it is going to be more data-driven agriculture. If you look at the investment that has gone globally in this space, large part of it has gone in big data and analytics, and rightly so. Finally, you can collect farm data, farmer data, field data, through mobile phones, with smartphones, clicking a photo, sending it back, geotagging, using satellites, using drones, using sensors. All that data, imagine if you have, we're able to then create services that actually are very relevant, very personalized, not necessarily taking them in an echo chamber. This is not, there's a risk of that. So you want to avoid that, but you do want to make it very relevant so that the impact is not only you're helping them improve their yields, increase their prices, but globally the big challenge of running out of natural resources or feeding the planet, all of that is going to be much more likely to be achieved or addressed as a challenge if we are more data driven, if we are more precision in the way we run agriculture across the value chain, and adopt technology as soon as we can. The beauty is that the farmers will start to do that. It is not an easy journey. It's not a straightforward journey. It does require a lot of persistence and changing of the behavior of the farming community across the world, including in the Western world. But it is something that is an amazingly exciting area. And I believe that millions and millions of hundreds of millions of farmers will now be, in the future, you will see, will be more and more data driven and not just intuitive in their approach to farming.
Terrific. Well, thank you for sharing the story with the Grow Asia Network and coming here to speak with us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.